Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am Sarah Evans, digital correspondent, strategist, and owner of Sevans Strategy. And I'm so excited to be part of the inaugural episode of Tuesdays with Turbine Labs. It's going to be an amazing opportunity to talk about the current media landscape and other important things going on in the world. Today's episode is actually titled Subject to Change because we are in a time of change. Things are not the same today as they were yesterday. And I've got two expert sources here to talk about what that actually means. Leigh Fatzinger, the founder of Turbine Labs, and Michael Ginn, longtime senior executive of CNN, Turner Broadcasting, and MediaLink, and also a friend of Turbine Labs. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. And for those of you listening or following along, you can use hashtag Tuesdays with Turbine. How are you all doing today?
Well, I'm doing great. It's always great to talk to you, Sarah, and so pleased to have Michael with us. I know it's going to be an incredible discussion about something that's on everybody's mind, and we know that, change is. I don't know if we've seen as much change as in the last 4 months as we had in the previous 30 years. So I think it's going to be a great topic to tackle.
It really is. And one thing before you jump in, I wanted to talk about what I really view what you're doing with Tuesdays with Turbine Labs. There's this whole subset now of thought leadership that's taking place. I can't go a day without seeing something related to thought leadership. And this is going to be intelligence leadership. And I think the key differentiator, and I know from talking to the team behind the scenes, is that you're going to give actionable things people can actually do, take away, and implement into their workday, which is something that isn't usually done when I participate in thought leadership. So well done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And hello to you, Sarah and Leigh. It's good to see you both. I got to tell you, I'm pretty excited about this. I know that, Leigh, you and I have had some planning sessions, and we started this conversation off of how do we tackle decision making and smart that evolution of thought leadership into something that's more actionable. And we kind of, began the discussion of what was happening around the world before it got turned upside down, what's still relevant to what was happening. And the fact is the change is happening so fast that it's really hard to comprehend day to day, if not hour to hour.
Well, and I think the other exciting thing about this, at least from my perspective, is a lot of times companies are hosting thought leadership sessions because they're trying to pass knowledge that they have onto somebody else. And this is interesting because thought intelligence is something that we get to use every single day in our own decision making, how we're navigating through what's happening in the world, as well as passing it off to with the intention of helping other organizations as well.
Well, I also think that we're fortunate that we have a network that gives us access to people that are really well informed in so many different areas, that as we move this forward, that our guests on a weekly basis won't necessarily have to listen to you and I. They'll be able to listen to some really smart people who have points of view and vision, and there's going to be a takeaway that's going to be actionable for everyone.
Yep.
And here's why I was most excited, is because I ask myself this question before I will sign up or register for anything. I always ask, will this make me smarter? And if the answer is no, I cannot dedicate my time to it, especially right now.
That's a good
litmus test. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I want to just jump in because I have 3 questions I wanted to ask you all. The first is about decision making. And if you are an executive who makes critical decisions, and I'm my own business owner, so I have to make these decisions every day, I can't just say things like I think or I feel. I really need to have the facts, the data to back up what I need to know. What do you think is impacting decision making the most for those critical decision makers right now?
Michael, do you mind if I just kick this off?
Go for it.
Volatility and uncertainty are really the enemies of sound decision making. Thanks. I don't know where that sound went away. I don't know where. Oh my gosh. Anyway, we're just going to keep going on. But volatility and uncertainty have been really, I think, the 2 defining characteristics of organizational and executive decisions over the last 3 or 4 months. If you think about where the world was on January 1st, 2020, And we're coming off of a decade of extraordinary, growth and prosperity. And in many ways, not that companies were allowed to coast, but they did feel like they had a pretty good sense of what was happening in the world, and there was stability there. And so you could plan out and budget out and say, yep, this is how 2020 is going to look. The beginning of March happens, and all of that is now off the table. And I saw something on Twitter this morning that I thought was especially poignant, and that was related to, if you think things are going to go back to the way that they were, then you are gravely mistaken. Things are in a new trajectory, and that's what we have to plan for. So we have to work our way out of that volatility. We have to work our way out of that uncertainty, and into a new normal. I don't know if that's what it is, but certainly a new environment. Michael, what do you think?
Well, I think that we began the year knowing it was going to be somewhat volatile because it was going to be an election year.
Right.
And again, no matter which side you sat on, you may have already made up your mind of who you were going to vote for or what your party, and you're going to kind of sit back and watch it all play out from a drama point of view. But the triple whammy I had, I mean, I believe technically the recession hit, in early February before the pandemic really took full effect. So you had the pandemic and the recession, which then accelerated during the pandemic, happening at the same time. And then, the social unrest that came out of it, and by the way, we still have an election year. I think that, when you look at it, every decision that every organization, every school board, every political organization, every business is making right now is changed because the parameters with which they were making their decisions has changed. And unfortunately, we live in a world where some of our best, technical information for making decisions is kind of dated. I mean, we don't really fully understand the aspect of a recession until we look back a quarter or two. But right now we're making decisions in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For both of you, so you are a decision maker. We're talking about, what's impacting those right now. But what are some of the risks or inherent risks involved with being the person who makes decisions? And then a follow-up to that, if you could make a wish list if you could gift those people tools and equipment to do their job better, what would those include?
Well, this is a tricky question because as the founder and the CEO of a business, and I've been extraordinarily fortunate to have great people around me for the past 7 years of growing it. But I got to tell you, being in the position of making decisions, the thing you're always really concerned about is, do I have enough information to make a decision that is sound? It doesn't necessarily mean that I have to be right or wrong 100% of the time. What I need to do is feel like I've got a system in place that makes me confident in the decisions as I make them. And it's sort of like having a batting average, right? That the more you get up there, you're going to swing and miss every once in a while, but there are certain consistencies that you can have that help you set up to be successful in a play or in a decision. So having that consistent system for me is one of the most important things. Michael, I mean, you've had a storied executive career. I'd like to hear your perspective on it too, because I'm just a lowly entrepreneur trying to grow a small business.
Well, you're far from a lowly entrepreneur. You're a successful entrepreneur that's going to be successful again. So, but I will take what you said and what I would layer on it is speed and warp speed. And where I'll reflect is both at MediaLink, where I worked on clients such as General Electric, NBCU, Blackstone, and then in my own business where they were slightly smaller. In MediaLink's case, we were charging 6 figures a month to help provide information to decision makers because their own incredibly smart organization didn't have access to the data and weren't able to have the insights to navigate, in, quite frankly, a digitally changing world. We would take, at minimum, 4 to 6 months to go through all the data, to have, concise insights and actionable recommendations. And quite frankly, I don't think anyone has the luxury of 6 months. They may not have the luxury of 4 weeks these days. So what I see as the most significant change is the need to make decisions now. I mean, if I'm a corporation, I'm looking at what I'm doing with my corporate real estate deals moving forward. Decisions on that. I need to be making decisions right now on what real estate that I'm retaining, what real estate am I letting go, what I'm willing to pay, what I consider fair market pricing for.
Sarah, I think just to add on to Michael's point, if you went and looked at the headlines related to your industry, or you went and looked at the headlines even related to anything that's happening, that's happened, if you went back to January, early February, the things that we were talking about in terms of product launches. Remember, we had a Super Bowl, right? Or the NBA or the NHL, sports that were well into their seasons when the pandemic struck. You look back at these topics and you think, oh my gosh, we seem so far removed from those events because of all of the massive volume of change that's occurred in the last 4 months. And so I think it's really important for people to have that context to say nothing that was valid even 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks ago is valid today. And to Michael's point, there's just no time to completely reset and have a greater understanding. So that's changed decision-making in a lot of ways, that we have to accept that we are not always going to have complete information, but the secret to success now is to have as close a view as possible to the complete view of information, and to start again building a system so you can see around corners and then get a little bit more predictability in your decision making in an environment that will probably never be the same.
I fully agree.
Inherently, when I think of executives and leaders at companies, I immediately assume that they're extremely bright, extremely intelligent, know numbers or know how to lead, have some really unique qualities that put them in that position. It can be hard, I think, at times to either admit what you don't know or acknowledge that you don't have the information you need to make decisions. What advice would you give to these people to, number one, at what point do you acknowledge that you need additional help? And number two, how do you executively communicate that?
Well, this is a great question. And the best leaders, whether it's COVID-19 or everything that we're seeing in terms of the social and racial justice issues that our country is going through right now, or the economic issues, or the changes of everybody's behavior. No executive, no policymaker was prepared fully for that in the way that you need to be to run the organization that you have. So I think that was actually a leveling off point, or maybe an inflection point for executives to say, there's no possible way I can see everything. The greatest leaders that the world has ever had are the ones that can admit that they don't know what they don't know, and that they seek as many resources around them to find information and data that is not whitewashed, that has not been prepared for them, that is objective and unbiased and obviously very, very, very timely. So I'm always amazed at once you get in front of an executive and you show them what's possible as it relates to information access. We all know that executives and policymakers have very, very busy and very, very tight schedules. But the one thing that they're willing to give a little bit of time for, or in some cases a lot of time for, is great information that helps inform their decisions. And the other side of that is the best leaders that I've ever met in the business that we have right now are the ones that are insatiably curious. They're always trying to find more information and different perspectives, both directly related to the things that they're involved in, and then tangentially, because everything is sort of interrelated. So I think, first of all, admitting to what you don't know is not a weakness at all. It's actually a strength. And then also just having as a characteristic of sort of core characteristic is an insatiable curiosity that says, I need more. Now, the trick, and I'll sort of let Michael go into this, is how do I get that information in the most efficient way? That information that is not whitewashed. Bad information when bad information is needed. Good information when good information is needed. But not, something that is prepared for the executive in such a way to just please them or check a box. That's the most, we'll see more businesses fail or falter because they receive filtered, biased, whitewashed information than almost anything else that happens. Michael, do you have any?
Well, I'm very similar. I'm just going to say it a little different. And the first question I ask anyone, and it is, what keeps you up at night?
Yeah.
And it used to be you would get a singular answer, and that would lead to your mission to solve it. I think you have to ask that question almost every day, and be prepared that you're going to get a slightly different answer every day. And then, consistent with what you said, Leigh, but maybe stated a little difference, is getting someone to acknowledge their tolerance for bad news, and really having an honest conversation. Do they have the full tolerance for it, or not? And then that kind of will open up how far you can go to really solve their problems. Because if they have the tolerance for bad news, if they can be open and honest about what's keeping them up at night, there's a pretty good chance there's someone out there who can help them out.
Well, and that to your point, Michael, also, there has to be an organizational and cultural mandate for being able to share this, concerns about, here's what kept me up last night. Can we talk about it? Can we, rely on our teams to go dig deep into, either internal information or external information to say, let's go find the facts out there. And then the mandate to be able to deliver back to those decision makers. Here's what's actually happening. This may not please you. And again, that's a cultural thing. At the moment that a subordinate feels like they can deliver bad news to their manager or their executive team or their board of directors, you break through. This is going to sound cliche, but it's really important. And if you look at case study after case study of companies that have been very, very successful versus the companies that have been completely disrupted, a lot of that was because there's a barrier that happens between sort of the mid-level management and the senior level management that says, I can't deliver bad news because if I do, that's going to cost me my job. And that's exactly the opposite approach. Now, that may have, by luck, enabled you to succeed in more prosperous, more expansionary times when sort of these things were happening in a natural way. But that's not the playbook anymore. That will not be acceptable anymore. And so we're going to see, there's a statistic out there that something like 20% of the Fortune 500 is recycled out every 10 or 15 years. I can't remember exactly the number of years. But we're going to see that acceleration happening even faster. And we're already starting to see it. Companies like Macy's, J. Crew, retail, restaurant groups, even airlines and large scale infrastructure manufacturers are being disrupted. And a lot of that has to do with a communication and an intelligence flow that's happening between the outside world, middle managers, and then the executives.
And I want to add one question, Michael, that I think this will be perfect for you. We're talking a lot about bad news, and we're talking about access to great intelligence, information, but really intelligence. Is there a correlation between bad news and really good intelligence to make organizations better?
Well, the reality is there's always bad news. I mean, there's always a balance between good and bad. I mean, we tend to, to filter what, gives us confidence to move forward. And it's almost cliche, but many times when it became obvious, when it was time to surface the bad news, someone would hire McKinsey to deliver it, and kind of wash their hands of being the messenger on it.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can hire McKinsey for all this 24/7. I think that you have to have the tools in place to be able to deal with this on your own, and really just cut the umbilical cord to having a high-priced consultant tell you that there's bad news on the horizon. I think that you just have to have the tools in place. And kind of pivoting back to Sarah, what you had said before, what do I want access to on a regular basis? And I'm going to say that, some people are dashboard oriented, some people are email oriented, some people are someone come in and present it to me. But I want someone to give me a concise understanding of my work outside environment and a concise understanding of what's going on within my own organization right now, and be able to take action on it, at least the top 3 to 5 things on an everyday, if not every week basis.
Yeah, Sarah, I'll add to that. It's an interesting phenomena that's come up primarily in the advent of social networks. And one of the ways that social networks became very successful very quickly, and this is the same for search engines, was they delivered you the information and the content that they could predict you wanted to see. Every executive, every policymaker is also a consumer. Every executive policymaker has a filter bubble, and they have sort of their own kind of affirmations that says, yes, we are naturally inclined to want to see things that are good. So the training of an executive or a policymaker, and the things that really differentiate great innovative organizations versus the ones that are about to be disrupted, is to be able to compartmentalize the inclination to go seek things that validate a momentary desire or satisfaction, and dig deeper into things that are harder to watch, may not be exactly what you want to see, but those things lead to better decisions. And I think that gap between being consumer and being executive is getting more clouded because the volume of information that's out there, and the time in which executives have to get the necessary information to make decisions. So I think the other trend that we're going to see, and Michael, you're exactly right, the big consulting companies have made billions in revenues by doing this work, along with other very valuable advisory work. But I also think the trend, especially now, is going to be more, I'll call it kind of D2E, direct to executive versus direct to consumer, right? So direct to executive, this is the information that I need. I need to get it from an unbiased, unwhitewashed source, and then make sure that my team and I are all singing, from the same sheet of music, as it were. And events, again, are happening just too quickly to have large committees deliver big presentations on a monthly basis. These things are happening in hours and sometimes minutes.
Leigh and Michael, you are both so insightful, and I could talk to you all day about these things. And every time I get to talk with either of you, I learn so much. And this is, I think, a great foray of what people can expect with Tuesdays with Turbine, and the great guests that you have coming down the pipeline. I'm not going to give away any of that intel right now, but some of the peeps on the list, and I'm excited to be able to learn from them. However, I will let people know, if you want to know who the first guest is, it's pretty cool. You can follow the Turbine Labs Twitter account, and they will announce it from there. And of course, it's called Tuesdays with Turbine because you're going to get to hear from these folks on Tuesdays. I thank you both for your time today. I hope you stay safe and well. And of course, to anyone listening, if you have questions, please feel free to comment or ask questions to either Leigh or Michael long after this live stream, and hope you all have a wonderful day.